that, we quickly move on to the next session, which is Interdisciplinary Approaches for Achieving Energy and Water Sustainability. Mikiko Tanaka is already here with us on the stage. So once again, welcome back. We are ready to start this next session, which is Interdisciplinary Approaches for Achieving Energy and Water Sustainability. Along with Mr. Tanaka, we have other esteemed speakers in this session. I'll take the pleasure of introducing them all to you. Joining us for this session, Mr. Sofarin Shia, Chief River Basin Planner, Planning Division of Mekong River Commission, Secretariat. He'll be joining us online. Dr. Pek Sokem, Executive Director, Cambodia Development Resource Institute, also joining us online. Ms. Ying Jiang, Regional Energy Specialist, Asia and the Pacific, Bureau for Policy and Program Support, UNDP, also joining us online. We have with us here Dr. Kapil Narula, Senior Analyst, Breakthrough Agenda, Climate Champions Team. May I request him to please join us on stage. A very warm welcome to you. We also have with us Dr. Smruti S. Patnaik, Research Fellow, MP, IDSA. May I request her to please join us on stage. Also joining us, Ms. Ambedkar Vishwanath, co-founder and director, Kubernath Initiative, Mumbai. She'll be talking to us online as well. Meanwhile, we have with us Mr. Shawahik Siddiqui, founding partner, Indian Environment Law Organization. May I request him to please join us on stage. So there they are, ladies and gentlemen, ready to take this session forward. Interdisciplinary Approaches for Achieving Energy and Water Sustainability. I request Mr. Tanaka to take the session forward.
Thank you very much. Good morning once again. So I've already kind of outlined the content of this panel discussion in the plenary session, but I'm really delighted to have this wonderful panel with us, both online and here in person, to share various perspectives and also experiences from different parts of the world on this energy, water, sustainability, and the need for interdisciplinary approaches. So I'm going to dive in, actually, and ask everybody to share what they have. It's very diverse, actually, so I'm not even going to try to, give questions or even summarize. But I hope the online participants are also there. Can't see them. So we're going to start. Yes, good. I'm glad to see you. Good morning. So we're going to start from Southeast Asia and the Mekong River, actually. And we have two distinguished experts who will share really complementary views there. So the first is Mr. Sofarin Shia, who's the Chief River Basin Planner at the Mekong River Commission Secretariat that is based in Vientiane in Lao PDR. He is the lead technical staff of the Planning Division. In particular, he leads the work on Mekong River Basin development planning, including the preparation, update, and implementation support to the IWRM-based basin development strategy and its linkage to other basin-wide sector strategies, the implementation of the Mekong River Commission procedures in close consultation with the lead technical staff of other divisions. Mr. Sofarin has more than 20 years of combined professional experience in water resource management, international affairs and diplomacy, development cooperation, and civil engagement across national, regional, and international levels with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Cambodia, World Bank, NGO Consortium, ASEAN Secretariat, and the Mekong River Commission Secretariat. He has engagement experience with diverse stakeholders and high-level knowledge and understandings of socio-political spheres in the Mekong countries in policy, strategic, and project planning and implementation. So over to you, Mr. Sofiarin. Have 10 minutes. 8, 10. Sorry, there's an audio problem. I think this is a system. No? Or is it muted? Are you muted?
May I interject? If we could request all our online speakers to please use some kind of headphones with a jack which connects you to your laptop or the device that you're connecting from. Otherwise, we can't hear you. We don't get the volume here.
Sorry, we're still not hearing you. Are you wearing something? Earplug, headphone? Yeah, you are. So
no, it's a wireless thing. I think they need to connect with a wired thing, probably. Is that so?
So I see these messages within the online platform. They can hear each other. So
yes,
there's something here.
Something here only.
So sorry, there's a technical problem. Although that's my sound. Mr. Sofiarin, are you able to hear me? Yeah, it seems he is. We can't hear you. So I don't know. I think we need the IT to really fix this system. But in order not to waste time, I'm sorry. I'm just going to turn the order around. If you are able to hear from the panelists at the table, right? And then I really hope this system problem can be fixed because it's really interesting information everybody's going to share. So we're going to go a little bit inside out, starting from this sub-region or even country, and then we can learn from other sub-regions or regions as well, okay? So let me now, is it changing, fixed? No? Still not possible? Okay, so let me see. I am going to go to Dr. Kapil Narula. Yes, senior analyst at Breakthrough Agenda at the Climate Champions team. Mr. Kapil Narula is a senior analyst. Oh, I already said that, yes. He works on catalyzing international cooperation for ambitious climate action. He has over 2 decades of versatile work experience in international organizations, governments, think tanks, and universities. He works on clean energy transition, climate change, and maritime sustainability. He is the author and editor of 7 books and more than 100 articles and papers. He has earlier worked as the Economic Affairs Officers at the United Nations, advisor on energy at Niti Aayog, lecturer at the University of Geneva, and worked in the India government. He holds an interdisciplinary PhD degree in economics, master degrees, and in engineering, and has a certification in sustainability and climate risk. So perfect for the interdisciplinary approach. Is the PowerPoint, do you have a PowerPoint? You have a PowerPoint, right? Can you project the PowerPoint, please, for Dr. Kapil Narula? So.
Hello. Thank you so much, Mr. Nako, for chairing this session, and also to IWF to organize this interdisciplinary approach session. May I request you play the presentation? Yeah, the next slide, please. I have a short video to start with. It's a 1-minute video, but I want you to see it and appreciate, the benefits of water which we have. The video, please.
Ashnir Grover. He was able to compete with Paytm and Google Pay, and he positioned Bharat Pay as a leader.
एक दिन हमारे गांव में किसी ने नहाने का सावर रख दिया। हमारे आधे गांव ने पानी पी लिया और एक शहर वाले का नहाना अभी खत्म ना हुआ।
Thank you. So what this says is that, as I said yesterday, it's not a problem of resource, it's a problem of inequity. Next slide, please. So in my presentation, which is for the next 8 minutes, I have 2 slides each on these topics on water access and water stress, where I'll bring in the perspective from the Middle East region and where I'm based at Dubai. And then we'll talk about waste for energy and water for energy and energy for water, and just touch a bit on the virtual water trade, followed by conclusion. Next. Right, so I think this graph you would have seen several times over, just trying to give a perspective on what is the water availability or access to water. And despite, we've having crossed 2/3 of our time to the SDG target of 2030, 1/3 of humanity still lacks access to clean and safe drinking water, plus water for sanitation, hygiene, and others. So let me give you a perspective on water stress regions, and this is how the global world map looks like. And I've placed the top 15 water stress countries by rank, and you see most of them are in the Middle East region and also South and Southwest Asia. But interestingly, I want to note that there are no rivers in the top 8 or in 8 of the 15 countries of the world where we have water stress. Now imagine these countries do not have any surface water, and how blessed we are here in some of our regions that we have surface water and flowing rivers throughout. But still we see that India is about 75% falls in the high water stress region, which is a cause of concern. The next 2 slides will show the issue of water for energy and energy for water issue. And the energy demand for desalination in all of these MENA countries is going to increase. We saw a doubling of demand for energy, which is about from 1,000 petajoules per year in 2010 to double to 2,000 petajoules by 2020. And it's further going to be double further till 2030. And most of these desalination plants, 21,000 in all globally, 50% are placed in the MENA region. So that's how all of these MENA countries get their water. And having stayed in India and MENA region, including Lebanon, I realized that the issues of water are about water efficiency and water management rather than availability or access to water. Moving on, I just give you a comparative assessment of water use intensity for electricity production. And here, if you see, biomass actually is the most water inefficient in terms of if it is used for electricity. So we need to seriously look at what exactly, when we say that we used to produce biomass for replacing fossil fuels, what is the impact on water? Similarly, hydropower, of course, because of more evaporation. And then we have fossil fuels. But the last three or four rows show clearly that wind, solar, PV, green hydrogen, which I presented yesterday, and are some of the most water efficient technologies for energy. So I think the clear choice of RE is very, very water efficient, and that's why water is very correlated with electricity and energy generation. And this slide shows the global water withdrawals for the energy sector in 2020 and 2030 in the net zero scenario for 2050 by the IEA. And we see that while energy demand will grow, water demand can actually be controlled for energy if we move to lower emission sources. And what we see in green is actually power generation from fossil fuels in 2021, which occupies close to 50%. But if we reduce that fossil fuel generation for electricity, then we have about 33% of water use for electricity from fossil fuels. And this is my last two slides, which I want you to also understand that water exports and what are the embodied water exports. So if we look at on the left panel, we have some of the exports of water. And most of it, about 70%, is from agriculture. Then we have industry, wood products, and energy. And the breakdown of agriculture exports in virtual water trade is shown in the next two panels in 86 and 22. But what I want you to show, and this is a very recent paper in Nature Reviews, dating November 2024, is that how the virtual water trade is changing. And in the top panel, you would see that China and India were actually net water exporters. And in the last panel, or in the lower panel, you will see that how they are now becoming water importers. So they are actually importing agricultural commodities, and agricultural commodities have embodied water or virtual water, and that relates to how India, for example, now is a highly water-stressed country, and it's become a net water exporter there. So the last slide, which very fantastically shows the virtual water trade, and apologies for the typo there, India is a net water exporter, not a water importer. But if you see on the left panel, all the greens is what India exports into China, into several other countries, and that's the surface water or the blue water, virtual water trade. And in the last panel on your right, you will see the virtual water export of groundwater. Again, India ranks very high in exporting groundwater also. So I think I've come to my conclusion of this presentation. And the key points which I want to re-emphasize is that in India and also in the MENA region as well as Southwest Asia, there's poor access to water and heavy water stress region. Next point, the renewable energy is water efficient and can help relieve water stress actually. And lastly, we need to account for virtual water trade, including imports of, for example, hydrogen, which also possibly embeds water, and biofuel trade, which also is a high extractor of water. So therefore, this session or panel on integrated approaches to water, energy, food security is extremely important and vital. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kapil, Dr. Naru. Yeah, this whole virtual water trade concept is a new learning for me, and it's adds more complexity layer, right? So we heard about carbon trade, how to reduce the carbon emissions through this counting. This may be a new area, actually. But thank you. So I don't know how the IT is, if it's working or not. Otherwise, I continue here. I'm not getting a signal. Okay, let me continue here. I'd like to introduce Dr. Smruti S. Patanaik, who is the research fellow at the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, to take the floor next. She has a very distinguished career as well. She holds a PhD in South Asian Studies from the School of International Studies at JNU and specializes on politics in South Asia and India's policy towards its neighbors in China and South Asia. She's served and worked in several universities around the world and in this region, including Dhaka University, the University of Hull, Colombo University. As a start, actually. She has a distinguished career. Anyway. She has also published more than 100 research articles and chapters on various aspects of politics in South Asia and have focused on India's relations with its neighbors. So I'm going to ask her to dive in a little bit about South Asia, actually, water and energy nexus issues, and I think we have a lot to learn there too. Thank you very much.
Check. Thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation. I think when we speak of this, the connectivity between water, energy, and, it also leads to the climate change aspect, which actually we are not speaking in this particular session, but mostly focusing on water and energy. I think what Mr. Narula spoke, Dr. Narula spoke, I think it is very interesting in terms of he brought out the connection that is existing between water and energy. And what I will do is that I will take this debate forward in a very kind of regional framework and looking much more towards India's eastern side, because we have very short time. So I will not be repeating what he has already spoken about. So in terms of the water, we know that this particular area is 50% dependent on agriculture, rainwater dependent, and mostly agricultural dependency is there. So therefore, the water becomes not just, very much connected to food security, but it becomes a kind of political tool within the domestic context of each of the countries. So therefore, when we speak of the water, of course, water is very largely politicized, especially the international river, the lower riparian and upper riparian kind of debate, which has in fact dominated the water sharing. Second is that we also know that 50% of world's population is live in highly, at least for a month, live in highly water stressed conditions, and 62% of annual renewable water in the region is pumped. So South Asia extracts a lot more groundwater. So therefore, whenever there has been any kind of debate or discussion between India and Bangladesh on the issue of Farakka Dam and the fact that India is not adhering to the treaty distribution, many of the people make that kind of accusation. Most of the time we forget to say that lot of groundwater also is being extracted, and that is something which is not taken into account when we speak of the river water sharing. We also do not take into account the upper riparian. In both the cases, both India's water treaties with Nepal and Bangladesh, there is upper riparian country which is China, and hardly anybody speaks of that country. So whereas we get into this debate of upper riparian, lower riparian kind of debate, who is Nepal is upper riparian for India and India is upper riparian for Bangladesh. So when this, this kind of debate becomes very much bilateral, we always tend to forget that there is a larger context, both in terms of the basin management, in terms of how we manage the water resources in this particular region. So I would say that, of course, this is very much connected to energy in terms of, we speak about the green energy transition in the region. We speak of, because fossil fuel is something which most of the neighboring countries, including India, they spend a lot of foreign exchange in, in importing fossil fuel. And in many of the places, especially I know in Bangladesh, to produce electricity, there is usage of, basically gas and petrol. So in that sense, when the foreign exchange is, not so much, you are really dependent for your larger trade, and spending a large sum of foreign exchange to produce electricity also becomes a problem. So therefore, in this context, the 4 countries within the BBIN, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal, context, there is this regional framework in terms of electricity exchange, in terms of also, high-speed diesel is also supplied to Bangladesh through the Numalgadi, the pipeline. Similarly, after the 2015 problem between India and Nepal, now we have also gas, a petroleum pipeline which goes to Kathmandu. But within the regional, sub-regional framework, because regional framework within the SARC framework, we failed to sign SARC energy grid, which could have, we signed that, but the motor vehicle agreement was not, was not signed. So that led, I would say, to a kind of, log jam in the regional integration process. But however, I think we should not look at the regional integration process just as a, as a kind of, it's an independent kind of thing. We would look, the building blocks are definitely bilateral. The building blocks are also sub-regional. So many of the time when you see criticism in terms of, how to cooperate between the neighbors.
Yeah. Now we join.
Okay, between the neighbors. So basically, we speak of the regional cooperation is not happening, but so sub-regionally, there is this electricity grid. Only recently, I think last month, 40 megawatt electricity was transmitted to Bangladesh using the the cross-border energy pipeline that has already been put in place. And if you look at in the context of the investment, because we speak of FDI in the, and to produce green energy, basically focus is much more on the hydropower generation. In Bhutan, Bangladesh has already placed to invest around $1 billion so that at least they can get the electricity from at a much cheaper rate, because you are investing in that particular country. So the transmission cost becomes a little cheaper, of course, with a bilateral agreement with India. So I would say that sub-regionally there is a lot of thing which is happening in terms of this. But in terms of the water management, there are 2 very significant trilaterals are there, but at the same time, unfortunately, it has not made much progress. We have on the Ganges, we have Nepal, Bangladesh, and India trilateral that is already existing. On Brahmaputra, we have Bhutan, India, and Bangladesh trilateral that is happening. So while most of the time we are mired with, a kind of debate where, bilaterally between India and Bangladesh, now we are speaking much more of the Tista River, and, this was not something which was agreed upon by the 2 countries. So I think we need to get out of this, the sharing, which is much more about the water. And we do not speak about, the basin management or the flora and fauna. And whenever we speak of the cubic of water which we receive at a particular point, it is mostly done in terms of, okay, you receive 100 cubics or 40 cubic to India, 30 or 60 cubic to Bangladesh. We completely forget that there is a river which is, which is life. It has a life of its own. It also needs to sustain in terms of the flora and fauna, and contributing to basically to the environment. And when we speak of the environment, of course, it's very much linked to the water. If you really do not have rain, you have drought, then obviously that is impacting on the rain, on the basically the water table which you have, groundwater table. It also impacts on the kind of flow you have on the river. So I would say that probably we need to get into both the regional and the sub-regional framework, and also pursue the bilateral framework. So therefore, it is not either or. It is not either regional or sub-regional or bilateral. I think it should be simultaneous at the same time. Make progress wherever you can, because we need to take into account the water dependency in this particular region, and also the energy dependency, which actually has made, in spite of having, not a stressful relationship, bilaterally stressful relationship between India and Bangladesh, but you still have the trade going on. You still have the energy which is continuing. Only with the private player like Adani, there is some problem. But both where India and Bangladesh has invested in some of the power project in Bangladesh has, it is producing the electricity which is required. So therefore, the emphasis is not on, more on like, either or kind of design. So I would say that, we need to move on to wherever we can cooperate. And this is where the territoriality, I'll just complete with that, this is where the territoriality does not matter. You can't be very territorial when it comes to water or when it comes to environment, which, these are very interconnected kind of thing. So, and in fact, I was, just prior to the meeting and speaking to her and speaking of Sundarban, where we were in fact working on a project which speaks of the joint management, because you can territorialize, a particular area which is environmentally very fragile, and you can't say that, that part is yours, this part is yours, because this is the reality of environment, the reality of water tells you that you can't geographically divide and, barter between the two countries. Nature has its own flow, and it will definitely determine the manner in which, we speak about the water, the manner in which we speak of energy production, the transition to green energy, and therefore having a kind of climate impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much for, in a way, explaining a very complex set of issues and, arrangements in a kind of digestible manner. But it does show that obviously binary thinking, either or, or black and white, cannot apply to any of the, the issues that we're dealing with here. And also, I think, in a way, we hear of the problems in the headlines, but, there are existing, arrangements, treaties, be it regional or sub-regional or bilateral, and they are functioning to, keep, the water flowing, but also in a, peaceful environment as well. We hear about the issues when, there is a problem, but I think it is good to kind of understand that, there are also functioning parts of it that we should not forget and also continue investing on. Thank you so much. I hear the connection is working, but I'd like to continue on this table so that also our panelists online can also warm up or catch up. I don't know how much they were able to follow these past two interventions. So I'd like to move to Mr. Shawahik Siddiqui. He is a very experienced, 16 years experience, environment and development law practitioner. He is a founding partner of the Indian Environment Law Organization in New Delhi, the only law firm in India to have been engaged for preparing Indian legislative response to the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. He's a fellow to the Department of State, USA, and International Boundary and Water Commission. He specializes in transboundary water cooperation agreements and treaties in South Asia, and is solicited by the governments and multilateral agencies for his legal services on improving bilateral cooperation in South Asia. Recently, he has been engaged by the UN's Economic Commission for Europe in Geneva. So, pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? That intro certainly seems a bit of overselling, so you need a bit of evidence on that. Very good morning. I claim myself to be the only full-time water lawyer engaged in promoting two global water conventions in South Asia. That claim is not disputed so far. So I retain that claim. Now, as law practitioners, for nearly a decade or so, we have been seeing these concepts being floated around. Nexus approach, IWRM, integrated perspectives, landscape approach, so on and so forth. And one wonders, how do you translate or transform these lofty ideas into practical solutions when it comes to environmental governance? In the realm of environmental governance, if you are looking for environmental solutions or improving environment, two fundamental things are required. One, you need enabling framework. And two, you need a dedicated or a strengthened institution. When it comes to Nexus approach, do we have these two fundamental requirements that are required to mainstream, so to say, any conceptual approach that you want to, be it Nexus, be it IWRM, be it landscape approach, which basically relies on the convergence, interaction, and coming together of expertise and departments to balance in terms of the net outcome. If you want to look at, let's look at the larger basins. Do we have the mandate, the requisite frameworks and the mandate, say at the transboundary level? Let's take GBM basin, which is much discussed, much talked about, quite familiar to most of us in working in South Asia. Indus happens to be a bit of a siloed area, domain reserve for few. But let's talk of the GBM. What do we have in this large, very large basin? We have got, say, in total, 5 agreements, 1 treaty, and a number of joint mechanisms between, at a bilateral level between the two countries. If you look at the terms of the treaties, they do not have the space for any kind of nexus. Let me be specific. If you are looking at 3 treaties between, 2 agreements, 1 treaty between India and Nepal, the Kosi, the Gandak, and the Mahakali, there is simply no space for any kind of an integrated approach or a nexus. These are the treaties which I often say are obsolete in many ways. So the Kosi and the Gandak agreement, if you want to look at, half of the agreements are about who will build the barrage, whether donkeys will take the material to the site or whether men and labor will take it. And once the barrage is constructed, your half of the agreement becomes obsolete. Remaining provisions are about how much is share, who gets what. So, in terms of accommodating these kind of approaches, you need to relook, revisit, modernize your water sharing agreements. That is what the picture looks like at the transboundary level. If you're interested in the lower Ganges, look at the India-Bangladesh water relationship. In the Ganges Treaty, you have aspirational provisions. The preamble of the treaty is very clear. If it wants to accommodate a lot, but it doesn't have enabling provisions within the treaty. You have 2 clauses. One is about the augmentation of the flow, other is about future cooperation. Rest of the agreement is featured around your schedule, who gets what in which month, so 4 or 6 months of cooperation effectively. There is simply no mandate for accommodating nexus approach at the bilateral level. Look at what kind of institutions we have got. We have got joint river commissions. What are those commissions? Those commissions are basically advisory technical bodies. They have got no specific mandate or power of their own. They are neither joint nor autonomous, so to say, as commissions, so they do not wield any kind of power. That's what the scenario looks like. I can, we can come to nuances, but the broader picture is that when it comes to larger basins, the bilateral frameworks that we have, and India continues to deal with bilateralism and hope it will, because in the national policies it is written, there is a clause in the Indian national water policy that says India will continue to deal at a bilateral level. Therefore, that position does not seem to change very recently going forward. So bilateralism does not seem to accommodate neither the institutions nor the framework. So that's one. Come to national level. Do we have any kind of a mandate under the national policies? I'll just recommend to do a control fine. There is not a single policy in South Asia that has a nexus approach, barring Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, which has all the fancy words that you can think of. But we do not have any integration or nexus approach. We do have IWRM, if you want to consider that as one of the spaces to get into nexus. But nationally, there is none. Water and land, if you want to be specific to India, are state subjects. Look at host of, except I would say a couple of states, Goa and Pondicherry and others, I have worked in all the states. There is not a single policy of the recent origin or 10 years back that promotes or looks at accommodating concepts that bring together different disciplines, talk of diversity, talk of interdisciplinary approaches. There is none. So that's broadly the nexus where it is placed at the moment within the current legal, and that brings it to a bigger policy and legal challenge, that what would be the challenges of integration, what would be the practical requirement of when you bring these very specialized domains together, and what would the framework look like. There is a de-nexused approach though. So there is a nexus which works in negative, and I'll be very quick in summarizing that. We want to produce more and extract more groundwater by giving more electricity or energy free of cost. So there is a negative nexus which is operating in terms of subsidies, which works to grow more food at the cost of more water. So you're basically exploiting the two, the soil, the water, and at the cost of energy, which is also at the cost of water. So there is this kind of a negative nexus that is operating, and by and large, irrigation or water resource strategy in South Asia is basically a food production and an irrigation strategy. And unless you change that, there is, as a practitioner, I see a very little space that Nexus is going to go forward. There is a space called Irrigation Acts, a very lesser known domain to even people working in the environmental sector. You cannot touch Irrigation Acts. Irrigation Acts are very, very solid, powerful instruments where they have got so-called equivalent powers of a forester, where water can be diverted, drained, taken out. You cannot question that water resource projects. Out of 2,000 odd, 2,500 odd large projects, that irrigation projects we have in India, only 12 projects are multi-purpose. Rest either are double use or single use projects. So therefore, you see that the Nexus approach, for it to be realized and mainstreamed on the ground, you probably need to work on irrigation sector, irrigation laws, which is the largest consumer of water and basically drives the entire Nexus. It does take you to multi-purpose projects, generate energy, take water to different remote areas and far-off areas. By the way, water is not priced in India. Only canal service is priced. So that's another financial angle to bringing in the Nexus approach. The third small component the third submission, so to say, I would like to make is that there are few silver linings that we are noticing. You will see few states have tried very good thing where the entry points for Nexus emerge. For example, Gujarat has tried double feeder kind of a policy where you do not provide electricity all the time to farmers, so that groundwater extraction is less, and so therefore, the drip irrigation and other methods come in, and energy is saved, extraction of groundwater is saved, and food cultivation or agriculture is optimized. So there's some experiments have also happened in South India, but it will take, there's a long way to go, I would say. So for a Nexus approach to be mainstream, there are very many challenges at each level, the transboundary level, the national level, and at the state and the subnational level. But then it has to be mainstream through pilots and showcase that this can work, which has worked in a couple of states, and those cases studied needs to be shared widely and worked upon. So I think I'll stop here, and if there are any queries, happy to answer.
Thank you very much. That was extremely insightful, complex. I've always thought that, yes, enabling frameworks and enabling environments are impossible to define and operationalize. Conceptually, it makes sense, but yes, you're right, the challenges of that. And that, in a way, legally, institutionally, or more formally, this nexus is not really kind of, found. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go to the online panelists. I hope you are there. I'd like to go back to the Mekong River Commission Secretariat. This is one formal structure of cooperation amongst countries along a river. So, Mr. Deciphering, Chair, are you there? Yes. So I hope we can hear you now.
It's called up.
Yes, yes. Please go ahead, sir.
Good, perfect then. Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for inviting us, the MOC Secretary, to join the meeting, this international conference. So I would like to take this opportunity to present or to talk a bit about one of the application of the MOC procedure with regard to the procedure for notification, pre-consultation, and agreement. Let me share you the PowerPoint a bit. Oh, I cannot share actually. So either I just talk through, or you can share from.
Can you share the
there.
PowerPoint online?
I tried to share, but it said.
No, I'm actually asking the. Sorry, I'm asking the team here.
Okay, please.
Okay, it's up.
Okay, great then. So this is the practical case that we applied one of the MOC procedure called the procedure for the notification, prior consultation, and agreement within the development of the Mekong River. So this specific procedure is one of the 5 MOC procedure. So let me first of all try to highlight a bit where we are and what we are as well. So I'm pretty sure that most of you know already that the Mekong River. Next slide, please. The Mekong River is one of the great river within the Southeast Asia as well as in the world as well. So it flows through 6 countries from the Tibet of China, and then goes through Myanmar, with Laos, PDR, Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And within this framework, the member country, meaning that Cambodia, currently Cambodia, Laos, PDR, Thailand, and Vietnam, signed an agreement, the so-called the Agreement on the Cooperation for Sustainable Management and Development of the Mekong River Basin, in order to strengthen and promote the cooperation within the Mekong Basin. So with this, it was signed by these 4 countries. Actually, Myanmar and China are not the member. And with this signature in 1995, it established the Mekong River Commission. So the Mekong River Commission comprised of 3 main permanent body or entity. The first one is the Council, which comprise of the 4 council ministers from each member country, Minister of either Environment or Water Resource Management. And also another layer is called the Joint Committee level, which normally discuss the strategic level as well as technical level. And another third level is the Mekong River Commission Secretariat, where I am from. So that is the brief story about the Mekong River Commission as well as the Mekong River. So the procedure for notification, next slide. Next slide, please. The procedure for the notification, pre-consultation agreement, for short PNPCA, is one of the procedures that set out 3 specific process involving the different type of development. For example, notification, which require only a member country to inform each other of their development. And the second one is on pre-consultation, which require a 6-month time frame. In addition to inform, they need to also consult each other within a 6-month time frame. But the consultation itself, it doesn't aim at having like a specific agreement by one member country or so. But it aim at agree on some of the condition how the project could be mitigate in terms of mitigate or minimize or avoid in terms of the impact. So it applied to the use of the water, especially during the dry season from the mainstream. And the third process is specific agreement, which apply to the inter-basin diversion from mainstream during the dry season. So these are the three specific process that apply within different type of the development of the water infrastructure as well as the within the Mekong basin. And the main purpose of this procedure is to allow the country to consult and mitigate the transboundary impact on environment or livelihood of the people. Next slide, please. So this is just to let you know that so far with this, under this procedure, there are around 60 projects that has been applied and notified. So 50 project is under notification, and 7 project is under the pre-consultation process. So all the 7 projects are the hydropower development there. So next slide, please. So this next slide, yes. These are the 7 projects that have undergone through the pre-consultation process, which means that the member country, all the projects are in Lao PDR. So Lao PDR submit the project to for consultation with other 3 member countries. So among these 7 projects, 5 already complete the pre-consultation process, including Sayapburi, Don Sohong, Pak Beng, Pak Lai, and Luang Prabang. And the other 2, one is on Sanakam project, is still ongoing, and Pungoy had not yet start officially. So 2 are under operation already, Sayapburi and Don Sohong. Next slide, please. So within this specific guideline, it's also a number of guidelines and tools has been established. The most specific and applicable one is the preliminary design guidance for the mainstream hydropower dam. So it provides the guidance as the checklist. When we do the pre-consultation process, all member countries and also the Secretariat refer to it as the compliant, and also we try to provide some recommendation in terms of measure how to mitigate, avoid, and minimize the impact. So it crosses through 7 different areas, discipline: hydrology, sediment, water quality, aquatic ecology, fishery, so on and so forth. And also in line with this guideline, there are a number of guidelines as well with regard to the hydropower development. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we within the pre-consultation process, member country have 6 months time to consult each other. So within this 6 months, the Secretariat formulate a number of technical report. We call it technical review report, providing based on the feasibility study submitted by member country. We look at what need to be further improved and what need to be further done. So within this, we also engage outside, beside the representative of the member country. We also engage other stakeholders, for example, the community and the development partner, so on and so forth. So this is one of the framework in which the water diplomacy play a very crucial role with development of the Mekong River Basin. And we also engage the representative of the civil society, NGO, so on and so forth. And at the end, the member countries through the joint committee can discuss the statement and can issue the agreed statement highlighting what measure that the notified, we call it the notified country or developer, need to be done in order to avoid the potential impact, transboundary impact from the proposed water use or infrastructure. So the statement and the joint action plan play a very crucial role in terms of allowing member countries to interact even though the 6-month time frame finished. But this post mechanism allow member country to still discuss and exchange, especially the redesign of the dam, the monitoring pattern issues, and they can still discuss during this post process. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Yep. Yes.
If you could wrap
And
up
as I
in
said,
a minute or
yes.
so.
Okay, can you, next slide, please. So this is just the example of the Singapore that what we have been done in terms of using this PNPCA process, and when after that there are a number of issues that have been improved in terms of the design, fish passage design, navigation, sediment facility, etc. Next slide, please. Which is the last one. So I would like to provide you some key message with regard to this practical application of the specific procedure, which link between the hydropower development and also trying to ensure the water sustainability. So it's really important in order to ensure that country can discuss, can consult each other and come up with the agreement on some specific measures that need to be taken. And also, this procedure allow the member country to focus very much on transboundary and cumulative impact. So within this procedure and in line with other work, the Mekong River Commission is also work with member country on establishing the so-called information sharing for the dam operation and coordination, including the emergency response. Another point that I would like to highlight, but I don't include in here, is that as we know already that with regard to the energy, renewable energy is also one of the key factor that is that the Mekong country is trying to invest and explore. So with regard to the hydropower development, the MOC also try to work with member country exploring the potential of floating solar and also the pump storage. So meaning that they are part of the renewable energy. So that I would like to end my intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chia. Very informative. We're going to continue with this Mekong region with Dr. Pek Sokem, who's joining us from Phnom Penh in Cambodia. He is an accomplished specialist in climate resilience mainstreaming and planning, transboundary river basin, sustainable and inclusive development, and in capacity development and policy dialogue. He has been associated with these fields for more than 30 years with the national governments, international organizations, universities, and private sector as senior government official, director, and chief executive. He holds a PhD in multidisciplinary and sustainability science at Tohoku University, also master degrees in law and international relations, water law. So yes, another very experienced expert, also practitioner. So I hand over to you, Dr. Pek.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me all right. My presentation today, I just want to revisit the multidisciplinary, next slide please, multidisciplinary panel approach in assessing water, food and energy nexus plus climate change that we conducted 12 years ago, long time ago. Then we talk about this nexus, and with the support from our multidisciplinary colleague from the Mekong region, from Australia, CSIRO, and also FAO and other colleagues, that is really a multidisciplinary approach in assessing it. We choose a topic because more and more we are relying on the resources. We're talking about 300 million people relying on the rich resources of water, especially of the Mekong, because they still have another major river in Southeast Asia. And the needs and the demand for and the urbanization also add up on the pressure more and more for the resources. But at the same time, even though my colleague from Vientiane mentioned about Transboundary River Basin Organization, they're still based on the 995 Mekong Agreement that negotiated more than 30 years ago. And now the new concept of Nexus, and they want to check if this concept of Nexus can be met by currently sectoral and project-based approach. So next slide, please. We look at different local decisions. Maybe Ministry of Mine Energy focusing on mining, on hydropower, on coal-fired power plant. By other ministry on transport focusing on navigation, and also other focusing on hydropower or irrigation and other. These all individual decisions made by different sectors, by different countries that look like local impact, but actually when we read and look at it more and more, we look at the regional drivers and so on and so forth. And then you can see that, yeah, there are complexity here. Yeah, maybe one sector may negate it, the possibility for meeting the need like food sector or irrigation or other land uses. And next one, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, those are the key sectors that we have looking at. Mekong River Mainstream Dam, my colleague from Amazi already mentioned about a lot of them. Large-scale water diversion, also sea level rise, climate change, more and more rubber plantation, more and more fuel crops that are growing for meeting fuel demands, and railways, and even bauxite mining in some part of Laos. So we try to look at all those development from cross-sectoral and transboundary assessment that the current PNPCA is still more looking at sectoral, only a few kilometers down the mainstream of the river, or of the reservoir. So we try to look at longer and larger transboundary aspect. Next one, please. Please don't be scared with this diagram. It is just to show the complexity, because sometimes the complexity and a kind of positive and negative influencing that maybe your Nexus idea, very good idea on the paper, cannot be materialized if the same development approach, sectoral and with this limited EIA, project-based EIA, and a little bit of improvement in monitoring, but still that show that, yeah, one thing lead to the negativity of something, or maybe add up more opportunity for others. But in general, with the current practices, Nexus cannot be completely achieved even 12 years later after our study in 2012. Next slide, please. And those are just the table summarize how the hydromorphology of the river change because of the damming of the hydropower dam. What change in terms of flow fluctuation, how the sediment load loss, how that will impact in terms of floodplain, because of sediment is important in terms of replenishing the fertilizing soil, and also the change in Tonle Sap, Great Lake. This is a big, for NGO and other, they refer to it as fish factory because a lot of fish catch every year from that Great Lake, and how they affect the reverse flow. That is also the main requirement under the 95 Mekong agreement, that you have to ensure the reverse flow in dry and in wet season. So it had implication on food and on energy. Next slide, please. The results show the synthesis is, yes, with the current practice, you will have food security issues. You have less fish. The studies show that between 30% to 75%, if all the dam built on the mainstream, you will lose about 75% of the fish catch per year. And you will see more and more energy crop will be grow instead of rice. And this will also lead to rice. This is a stable food security in the region, but also maybe for the world because of exportation to different parts of the world. And also, we also see flood risk from natural. Normally we have natural flood. Now we have operational flood because of the dam release, because of the dam break, or because of other things that make it more dangerous, more risky. And as several dams operate together, like over 100 in the tributary, at least 12 so in the upper in China, without coordination and the release and or other, that make the flood more and more prominent. So energy prices, and also this lead to the livelihood and migration, because this migration, people will be forced to migrate to look for new livelihood, look for new income. So the nexus for me, I think my last word is, yeah, it is a good concept, good idea, but it needs more than just political will. And they need action. They need legal framework change. They need a mindset change. I don't think we can wait another 12 years to see this come into a reality. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting study, actually. And I mean, it does show the severe consequences of not dealing with this nexus, as well as the complexities of dealing with the nexus, or this new word, plexus, I heard. Yeah. I'm going to shift now to a different kind of angle, maybe solutions on the ground. And I'd like to introduce Ms. Ying Jan from UNDP. She's joining us from Bangkok's Sustainable Energy Hub. She's an regional energy specialist for Asia and Pacific. Ying has over 20 years experience in climate and energy, including 8 years with the UN Environment Program in Geneva, where she actively engaged with trade, investment, and business community on green transition. She also has experience curating climate and energy agenda in UNIDO and the World Economic Forum. She's trained as an economist and did her graduate study on environmental change and management in Oxford. So, Ms. Ying Jiang, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mikiko. Can you hear me well?
Can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to join the workshop today, and very rich discussions about water energy nexus. It's one of the, I think, fast growing and emerging topics in the kind of nexus area, which is very much needed for sustainability. As a few, I think, panelists and experts have already mentioned, we need a holistic approach and we need synergies across different domains and areas. So before I dive into this, I just want to say a few words about the energy work in UNDP. Yes. So as a development organization, our energy work is anchored very much around energy for development, which means that we do not just care about the megawatts added, the solar PV installed, but we want to ensure all of that would in the end lead to development opportunities. And those opportunities have to be accessible for everyone, for people in different social segments, especially those in rural and remote areas and vulnerable groups. So our energy work is very much delivered through the Sustainable Energy Hub and together with our country offices, 24 country offices in Asia Pacific region in particular, and around 3 pillars. The first one is energy access, which I think this region has made huge progress over the past 2 decades, but still there are the last miles to be filled in remote and rural areas. And the second is energy transition, which is high on the agenda in many countries in the region. And the region itself, I think, holds more than half of the carbon emissions worldwide, most of which sourced from fossil fuels. And the final pillar is energy finance, of course, to improve energy access, to transition to cleaner energy systems. We all need finance to operationalize and make that happen. And we deliver our work through 3 basic principles: leaving no one behind, structural transformation, and also building energy resilience, especially in the context of climate change. Briefly, a snapshot of our energy portfolio in the region. So we have energy-related projects in 27 countries with a total budget of nearly 500 million. And also we have a huge number of direct beneficiaries, including those benefits from energy systems related to water, agriculture, and health and infrastructure. So going back to the energy water nexus discussion, as I said, in UNDP as a development organization, we see both energy and water are key elements for human development. I think those were very much clearly illustrated by SDGs. But apart from the SDGs 7 and 6, there are a lot of SDGs are closely related to energy and water as well, including those on climate action, on health, on gender, and also on partnerships and ecosystems. I think a few colleagues and experts have already very well articulated how energy and water systems are closely interconnected, and they can be mutually supportive as well. As we see in this region, hydropower plays a big part in many countries in energy generation, and in some cases, the share of energy generated from hydropower can be as high as 70%. And in general, I think the water system, on average, in urban context, would require 7% of total energy generated in the cities. So those two are very much related. And also, as Mikiko, you mentioned very well in the beginning, apart from generating energy, water can also be used to support energy storage, which is very much needed for the integration of renewable energy like solar and wind, who are more intermittent in nature and would require some kind of backup to ensure flexibility, reliability for the energy supply and the total energy infrastructure system. And both of them are under great pressure. A few common challenges, including climate change. I think we all see and feel living in this region the growing temperatures and also the intensified extreme weather events, flooding, droughts, and extreme coldness as well. But in general, I think the data shows that 90% of the climate disasters are closely related to water. And at the same time, the region is also trying to meet its growing demand for both water and energy. This is very much driven by economic growth. And also the fast urbanization and industrialization. Two industries, for example, textiles and mining, both of them are growing very fast and play a very important role in economies in terms of exports, value chains, jobs, employment, and also the revenue, tax revenue for the government to provide social services for their people and population. But both of them, textiles and mining, are very water and energy intensive. If you look at textile industry, apart from the huge amount of water needed for the production and the whole value chain, there's also a big impact on water pollution, which is a growing concern to many of the countries. And for mining as well, the sector is growing, also partly driven by the transition to clean energy, which would require a huge amount of critical minerals. So I think how to meet the growing demand of water and energy in a sustainable and clean way is a big challenge for many of the countries in the region. And this all leads to resource efficiency. For both water and energy in the current system, there's still big room to improve efficiency, the productive use of water and energy to avoid waste and to encourage the circular models that can reduce waste and also to improve the efficiency. We can work with all these systems. And finally, there's also an issue of access and security. For both water and energy, I think when we are talking about access, it's not just access for one time or for a period of time. We need reliable and stable access and secure access, which has to be affordable for people as well, especially for those low-income households and groups. All these challenges would require a transition to sustainable and resilient pathways. So in UNDP, our approach, as I said, is anchored around energy for development. But at the same time, we are also encouraging and supporting integrated policy making. On one hand, as I think a few panelists have mentioned, we want to integrate water and energy systems in a sustainable and inclusive way. For example, when governments are planning new grids, modernization strategies, or energy storage systems, EV charging stations, they have to take into account the potential impacts on water supply. And also, as many countries in the region are exploring opportunities and potential in biofuels and hydrogen, with both growing as a kind of emerging renewable energy to meet net zero and just energy transition targets. But at the same time, both biofuels and hydrogen require huge amount of water. So when governments are designing their strategies on biofuels and hydrogen, they have to think about the water supply, the require of water, and whether that would have any impacts on water usage, and whether would that put any stress on already scarce water sources in the region. At the same time, I think apart from the integration between the two systems, we also need to think about other policy domains. Because of the cross-cutting nature of both water and energy, we have to bring in economic, trade, investment, and finance, fiscal policy as well into the picture, because their policies on investment, on industry, on infrastructure would have big impacts on both water and energy. At the same time, the economic policy instruments can also be used very effectively to improve sustainability in water and energy management systems. For example, tariffs for clean technologies, market access rules, and also the public procurement rules and approaches, and also some of the standards labeling and certification systems for water and energy management and for recycling. So we need different policy tools coming from different policy domains.
Ying, can you wrap up, please?
Secondly, sorry?
Can you wrap up, please? It's 11 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. And secondly, also the importance of ensure just transition, which we have already touched upon, and also governance and institutional capacity is very much needed. And I also want to bring into the picture the importance of partnerships and innovation with private sector, including business, industrial parks, banks, insurance companies, because most of the time, the technologies are well available. The key challenge is to find the viable business model that can sustain and provide the benefits and the risk-return ratio that could work in longer term and in medium term as well. I won't go into details, but just some of the examples of how UNDP has been supporting countries in the region and also in Africa to bring in sustainability in water energy nexus systems, and also to build policy frameworks and bring different stakeholders in the management solution in the context of the climate adaptation and resilience. Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ying, for sharing, all those many considerations for a holistic approach to that, and also some of the, examples of UNDP's work in that domain. So thank you so much. Last but not least, I'd like to go to Ms. Ambedkar Vishwanath. She's joining us today from Geneva. Thank you for waking up so early. She's co-founder and director of the Kubernetes Initiatives that's based in Mumbai. And she's also a DFIAT Maitri Principal Research Fellow at La Trobe Asia, La Trobe University. She's a geopolitical analyst and water security specialist with experience in the field of governance, conflict resolution, foreign policy, and security. She works at the intersection of water, climate, and long-term security, and is building out new opportunities for India and Austria climate partnerships while in Australia. She's all over the world, actually. So, Ambedkar, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mikiko. I'm assuming you can hear me?
So we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me over, and good morning to everybody from Geneva. The one advantage of being the last person to speak is that I don't have to say very much, because almost everybody has already touched upon a lot of what I was planning to say. So what I think I might try and do is tie some of these aspects together. Unfortunately, because of the tech issues, we couldn't hear the entire presentation of Dr. Narula's speech, and then the other panelist from IDSA, but I did manage to catch some of what Shavahik said, and then, of course, everybody else from the online space. So what are the couple of things that I feel like are being repeated a couple of times through everybody's presentations and these threads, right? One is what Dr. Narula said. It's a problem of inequality and inequity. Now, the thing in India and most of South Asia is that we focus on the fact that we don't have enough water because we are using standards that were set almost 65 years ago to calculate how much water we have per capita, right? We need to recalibrate those standards based on our context of South Asia, and I speak for all the South Asian countries. It's not always so much as a problem of availability and how much water we have. It is a problem of, as Dr. Nola said, inequity. It's also a problem of access, right? And then that brings me to then what Shavahik was talking about, is that we don't have the frameworks and the institutions to understand, one, how do we overcome that inequity problem, and how do we overcome the access problem? As Shavahik rightly said, and he and I think, agree on pretty much everything as to what it is the water situation in India and then the larger South Asia region looks like, is that we need a strategy as to what a framework and an institution could look like when it comes to addressing the problem of inequity and the problem of access. Now, in India, and we know this, access is only now being looked at in terms of providing water for all through the Jal Shakti Ministry's Piped Water for All program, which has been incredibly successful in its reach of creating that piping network across the country. As I think that the data is a little bit different if you look at different standards, but from the ministry itself, we are almost at 80% coverage across the country. However, if you look at other data standards, it's probably a little bit less, so let's say 70 to 80%. The question here is, do we have the institutional capacity to be able to provide the water that we need into all of that piping system, right? And that's not there yet. So we might have built the infrastructure, but we don't necessarily have the capacity, the ability, and the understanding as to how to ensure that that water is 24/7 through that piping system, and it's clean and it's usable, right? So I think that is where some of our roadblocks come into play. We've heard from both the Mekong and the UNDP for some excellent, I think, suggestions as to what has happened in other parts of the world and what we could then learn from that in India. Now, when it comes to India and South Asia, we've always known that the Mekong River Commission for years and for decades has tried in various different formats to see how they can overcome their structural barriers, whether it is institutional or financial or otherwise. There's also a structural barrier when it comes to data collection, to understanding, analyzing, and how do we use that data. There are also other examples, whether we look at West Africa, so the Senegal River Basin, the Nile River Basin, several initiatives that have been attempted in the Middle East, in West Asia, and in Central Asia. In some cases, we look at some people's experiences, their challenges, how they've tried to overcome it or not try to overcome it, and we learn from that, right? But what is it that we actually need to be able to address this question of inequity, the problem of access, the lack of the frameworks, the lack of the institutions, and the fact that in India and in most of South Asia, we still look at water as something that we need to use and then discard, because we assume that it's going to be there forever, if that glacier is always going to be there, or that river has always been there, or the aquifers have always been there for us to use. And I think that is a fundamental question that we need to address. And I want to put forward three things that I think that might tie in what other people have been saying as a way forward, right? What is it that we need? We need innovation. Now, what do I mean by innovation? Innovation is not just how do we use better the finite amount of water that we have, and it is to a certain extent finite. But innovation is also about how do we connect the usage of water to every single other sector that we have. Some people before me have talked about multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral approaches, right? We need innovation over there. So when we say water for energy, or water for food, or water for long-term security, or water for industrial growth, right? Textiles, for example, is a high user of water. So is automobiles. So is paper. These are all some of the fastest growing industries in India. The diamond industry is a huge user of water. Can we bring in some innovative thinking into what our connection between water and all of these different sectors? And innovation doesn't have to be at that very highest level, right? It needs to be also at that medium scale and at that bottom scale as well. So we can work with solutions that are easy to translate across the board and then translate upwards. Along with innovation, what do we need? We need ideas that are sort of connected to that innovation, right? And I want to make clear that innovation and ideas here are a little bit different, because ideas often come from our missteps, but ideas also come from other people's experiences. Ideas also exist within our country. And by this, what do I mean? If you go across, and I've traveled quite a bit of India looking at what women are doing, for example, in villages when it comes to water saving technologies and methods, right? Low cost, very easy to implement, very easy to scale up and scale across the board. Can we take ideas from there? If we look at some of the traditional methods of water management, can we take ideas from there? innovate around that, add it then to our needs in other spaces, put some money behind it, and then create something new out of that. There's a lot of ideas that exist across the board. And the third thing that we need, which is also very related, is a much more inclusive approach. And what do I mean by inclusive approach? Of course, it's multidisciplinary. We cannot think about water in some silo. We also cannot think about our energy future or our food security future or our development industrialization future, our urban future, right? India and South Asia, in fact, most of the world is now urbanizing quite faster. And by 2030, we're likely to see almost 75% of India's population living in cities. And we think of an inclusive approach on urbanization and water. All of this also then relates to what I was talking about in terms of ideas and then innovation. Inclusive is also sectoral, of course, but inclusive is in terms of people. Can we bring in, and I feel like this is something that people know, but we need to say it again and again. Can we bring in the voices of the women into this entire discussion? Can we bring in the voices of vulnerable communities into this entire discussion? Because at the end of the day, the vulnerable communities, the last mile of people whom we might be creating a framework or an institution for, have we done it right by what it is that they need and what it is that they will need for the future? If not, then we are just creating a whole cycle of problems that we are then going to have to deal with 10 years down the line, right? So an inclusive approach is sectoral, an inclusive approach is regional, an inclusive approach is then also by the people whose voices need to be brought in. An inclusive approach, and I'll tie this back in then to the fact that we've talked a little bit about transboundary river management. An inclusive approach is also over there. And now in South Asia, that becomes really difficult to do. We know this, we've seen it. I think Shawahik was the only one who a little bit touched upon the fact that the Indus is a river basin that very few actually work on and look at. We need to change that. There is some excellent work being done on the Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna basin at that small scale between states in India and counterpart regions in other countries. Can we look at all of that and see what we can learn and perhaps bring it to a much more regional context, right? It seems really difficult, but if we look at what is actually happening in terms of data sharing across borders between India and Bangladesh, for example, or the fact that despite our tensions with India and China, we have had continuous dialogue on looking at glacial melt data collection and analysis. And this has happened in the background, quietly, flying under the radar, so to speak, for several years. And that data that's been collected and analyzed is really very useful. There's a lot of good work happening within ICIMOD, for example. And then if we come to the Western side, again, despite all these tensions that we have had with our in the neighborhood, there is still dialogue and discussion between, sure, a very small set of people, but that exists and that can be increased between India and Pakistan, for example, on looking at how we can do better community level engagement, that when these systems political systems allow us to increase, we can then scale up, right? So a lot of this is happening.
You can wrap up, Ambedkar.
Yes, this is my last point, right? That a lot of this is happening. We know that this is happening. We also see what is happening around the world in a global level. Can we bring some of that thinking? We need to really innovate in terms of how we approach this entire process of putting water within the larger nexus, but also making sure that we are very inclusive in terms of where and how we connect water to the rest of our long-term security goals, whether it is on a more traditional side of security or on a more non-traditional emerging aspect of security, which is, food, health, climate, and all of that. Yeah, so I'll stop there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambedkar, for really synthesizing a lot of what was discussed today. I wish I had more time for questions and answers, but what I'm going to do, because I think we're really off at time, I'd like to ask each of you to just in like 30 seconds, I know you've been in this area for a very long time, you've studied this very well, you know a lot. What is your takeaway from this panel discussion?
Jump to another panel at All right, so I think what needs to be done is look at wrong incentives, look at where we have patronized misgovernance or lack of governance, and look at misplaced policy priorities, for example, in the irrigation, water resource, mega water resource development projects. That's an area we need to focus upon, which will probably promote Nexus approach. Thank you.
I would say I think there is a lot to be, in terms of dialogue that needs to happen at all level, not just between the government when we are speaking of water scarcity and the spread of energy, especially electricity in rural areas. And as one of the panelists was also saying of bringing the marginalized group to the water discourse and also to the energy discourse. And that is where we can develop a nexus. Otherwise, it really appears that the dialogue is happening in silos, and we need to bring all this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Nexus of people. Yes.
3 things. First, implementation. Second, implementation. Third, implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Very simple. Okay, online. Mr. Chia, are you there? Anybody online?
Yes. So
Mr. Chia, take away, soundbite.
Okay, 2 things from me is one is the framework or institutional arrangement. For example, with regard to the data sharing, we can start it with the building trust among the member country, among stakeholders, and also it need to be under a framework which, for example, the procedure for data information sharing, etc. Second thing is new technology. So, for example, we do a lot of hydropower development, but we need to recognize that a lot of impact has been caused by hydropower, and renewable energy, pump storage, wind and solar is also a good option for the supplementary or even replacement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck.
Yes, for me, I think that there's a possibility to achieve if we have the champion who will be there to make it possible, and also consistency and very close monitoring to make sure this beautiful concept can be materialized. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ying?
Yeah, my takeaway is that to make this work, we need public-private partnerships for governance, for implementation, and for innovation. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Ambedkar?
Yeah, I like the implementation idea, but I think along with that, we need much more data collection and analysis of that data and depoliticization of data.
Thank you very much. So my takeaway, I mean, very difficult to summarize, but certainly it's very complex. I think we do need to study this, especially if we're diving into this very carefully. We need to really work with people who know these areas, but basically we do need to find, what we can do in the spheres of where we work, actually, because it is everywhere where this holistic approach or nexus is. So with that, I really like to thank all the panelists. Thank you so much, really online and also here on the table. I'm sorry that there was a tech issue. We will share the PowerPoints of those that you may have missed, and I hope we can connect. And thank you all, audience here and also online, for listening. I'm sorry we didn't have time for questions. You can catch the experts who are here over the course of the day. So I hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for a session well conducted, and thank you to our online speakers as well. And we take the pleasure of requesting Dr. Arvind Kumar, President, India Water Foundation, to please join us on stage to present the mementos. So we thank Dr. Narula, Dr. Kapil Narula, thank you. Thanks to Dr. Smriti S. Patnaik. I'm unsure of that, whether that's possible or not. And of course, we are thankful to Mr. Shawahik Siddiqui. He has left for the alternate session.